Hello guys, my name is Raresh and welcome to the M21 limited set review. Today we are going to cover white. I'm gonna walk a bit through all the cards and I'm gonna grade them. You can find a deeper explanation of the grades below, yeah, in the description. But the grades are just as a guide. It's more important what I'm saying about the cards and how the cards are going to perform in a specific context. Alpine Watchdog, it's a 2 mana 2/2 with Vigilance, your basic stats for a 2 drop with Vigilance, which is a bit of an upside. It's also a dog, it will go with some synergies in the set. I would give this one a 6. Angelic Ascension, 2 mana, exile target creature or planeswalker, its controller creates an angel. This is nice because you can get rid of their bombs, but you give them a huge creature. You can also use it to kill your own creatures, maybe in response to a removal, and then you make a 4/4 angel with flying. I'd give this one a 7 because I think it has a pretty big potential and it's versatile enough to justify that big of a grade. Anointed Chorister. 1 mana lifelink. For 5 mana it gets +3/+3 until end of turn, kind of a Brushwag in Concordia, but for 5 mana and without trample but with lifelink. It's good to trigger the gain 3 life effects. You see there are multiple, especially in white. But 5 mana it's a lot. It's probably gonna take your entire turn to do that. And without the buff, this is just a 1/1 lifelinker. I'd give this one just a 5. I think it's a filler. Avon Gagglemaster, 5 mana for a 4/3 flyer that gains you 2 life for each creature with flying you control when it enters the battlefield. Paying 5 mana for a 4/3 flyer, I think it's an okay cost, and it always gains you at least 2 life by itself. So I'd give this one a 7. I think it's gonna be what white will most often want at the end of their curve. Baneslayer Angel. This is 5 mana 5/5 flying first strike lifelink protection from demons and from dragons. It's definitely a bomb. The only problem with it is that it's easy to answer, but it definitely requires an answer, otherwise it just runs away with the game. It's basically impossible to kill it in combat. It has first strike, so even if you have a huge flyer, it's not really gonna matter. Also, it makes lifelink, so with each attack it performs, you gain the same amount of life as you deal damage. So it's a great card. I'd give this one an 8.5. Next up we have Raquet. It's a planeswalker for 3 mana. It comes with 3 loyalty counters. +1, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature and it gains indestructible. -3, whenever you one or more non-token creatures you control attack this turn, create that many 1/1 tokens tapped and attacking attention. That's for -2. And for -6 you get an emblem with at the beginning of combat on your turn, create a 1/1 white soldier creature token, then put a counter on each creature you control, a +1/+1 counter. Not the most busted planeswalker ever, but it's still an 8.5 in my opinion. It's gonna help you go even wider than you already have, and it's gonna stay there and buff a creature in case you're not able to attack. A steady source of +1/+1 counters, still something you want to first pick in a draft and try to outrun your opponent with bigger creatures. Bosley's Acolyte, 4 mana for a 2/3 lifelinker. When enters the battlefield, put a +1/+1 counter on each of up to 2 other target creatures. So it cannot put the counters on itself, but it's 4 mana worth of 4/5 in stats. but you need to have two other creatures to benefit from those. Uh, Even so, probably you're gonna have another creature and then you play a 2/3 lifelinker and upgrade one of your creatures. I'd give this one a 7. Bosley's Lieutenant. It's a 4 mana 3/4 rare. Vigilance, protection from multicolored. When enters the battlefield, put a counter on target creature you control. And then when Bosley's Lieutenant or another creature you control dies, if it had a +1/+1 counter on it, create a 2/2 White Knight creature token with Vigilance. A lot of text there. I think this card is very good. It's in par with the other white mythics we've covered so far. This is a rare though. So 4 mana 3/4 Vigilance. It's already good. Protection from multicolored. It's gonna help it a bit, but not that much in the format. There are not that many multicolored cards. I think there are like 12. And then it puts a counter on target creature you control. You can even put the counter on itself, so it's a 4/5 then, which is pretty big. And when something with a counter dies, that's an effect. You're gonna get a lot of tokens. White has a theme of +1/+1 counters, so you're going to have multiple creatures with counters on them. If this stays on the table, creatures just won't be dying. You will make 2/2 tokens. A big amount of them, I think. 8.5 for Bosley's Lieutenant. Next up we have Bosley Solidarity. Put a counter on each creature you control. It's great if you have the theme of counters, but if you cannot run that, I think it's just a 5.5 as it fills your deck. Yeah, it's great to upgrade your creatures, but what if you don't have creatures, or what if you have one and the slight upgrade doesn't matter? You need to really go wide for this one to make something. I just give it a 5.5. Celestial Enforcer. It's a 2/3 tapper for 3 mana. You have to pay 2 mana tap, but it only taps a creature if you have a flyer. White is generally gonna have a decent amount of flyers, but still not being able to activate this regardless of other creatures you control makes it slightly worse. I would give it just a 6. Concordia Pegasos is a 2 mana 1/3 flyer. Um, Now this is pretty basic. At 2 mana you either get a 2/2, a 3/1, or a 1/3. 1/3 is on the defensive side. It's a flyer, counts towards the enforcer we just covered, and it's fine because with flying it can ping for 1 damage if the board stalls and they don't have a flyer. I would give it slightly more than a filler. I would give it a 6, but it's not something to be very wow about. Containment Priest, 2 mana for a 2/2 flash creature. If a non-token creature would enter the battlefield and it wasn't cast, exile it instead. Doesn't have much use in limited. It's basically just a 2/2 for 2 mana with flash. Again, that doesn't help. I would just give it a 5.5. It's probably a 5, but let's say maybe the flash can get one of their creatures by surprise. Daybreak Charger, 2 mana for a 3/1. So we covered all the basic 2 mana, 2 drop stats. When enters the battlefield, target creature gets +2/+0. That's a big amount of power it gives to something. You need to have another creature on board to make use of it, but it's fine to have this option, and even if you don't use its enter the battlefield effect, it's still a 2 mana 3/1. I would give it a 6.5 based on that. I think it's pretty useful. You want to go heavy creatures and aggressive before this one is good. Defiant Strike, 1 mana, target creature gets +1/+0 until end of turn, and you draw a card. So it replaces itself. It's fine. It's very good with prowess. If you have prowess, look for this card, but otherwise +1/+0 is not gonna achieve that much. It's a way to cycle through your deck. Being 1 mana, it's fine, but it's still a filler. I would give it a 5. dub, enchant creature. It gets +2/+2, has first strike, and it's a knight. It's interesting, it's a knight, but it doesn't have vigilance. Usually knights have vigilance. So the thing with enchantment is, I always say, you build a 2-for-1 situation for your opponent. Yes, if they don't have a removal, having a creature upgraded by 2/2 worth of stats and first strike, it's great. And if it stays on the battlefield, it's probably gonna wreak havoc. But it's very risky, and if they have an answer, you fall behind. So I will just give this one a 5. It's a filler. It's not something I'm generally actively looking to play in my deck. Fate's Fetters. Enchant permanent. When enters the battlefield, you gain 4 life, and then enchanted permanent can't attack, block, nor use its activated abilities unless they are mana abilities. So this is Pacifism. It can enchant any permanent, so it goes on planeswalkers, or it goes on artifacts as well. You gain 4 life when you play it, so even if you spend 4 mana to play this new version of Pacifism, you gain 4 life, and it also has an upgrade because they cannot use activated abilities. That maybe doesn't even make it a new Pacifism. It's a different card on itself. I'd give it a 7.5 because it's expensive, and unlike the blue 4 mana enchantment, it doesn't have flash, as you're going to see. But it's still an answer to basically everything, so it has to have a decent grade. Falconer Adept. When it attacks, create a 1/1 white bird creature token with flying that's tapped and attacking. Interesting effect, create tokens as cheaply, if you can call attacking cheaply. The trouble is, this card, it's a 2/3. So it's gonna attack, and it's gonna be pretty easy for your opponent to mess with it, to kill it. So you're still going to remain with the flyer, but this is not gonna trade probably. I still like the effect, and I will give this one a 7. Fear of Resistance, Feet of Resistance, sorry. It's a 2 mana instant. Put a counter on target creature you control, and it gains protection from the color of your choice until end of turn. Nice way to protect your creatures. It goes with the theme of white a bit, because you get that +1/+1 counter. But being 2 mana, I like my combat tricks at 1. So I would give Feet of Resistance a 5. Gale Super. It's a flyer. When Gale Super enters the battlefield, target creature gains flying until end of turn. 4 mana, 3/2. So you get pretty good stats for 4 mana, and you also give flying to something. That's gonna probably attack and deal some damage. I think it's a decent one to have in your deck. 4 mana is not that much. You can play multiples even. So I would give Gale Super a 7. Next we have Glorious Anthem. Creatures you control get +1/+1. This is kind of a classic, I'd say. It's pretty nice to have this card. You'll probably play it in any deck. Maybe not in those that have like only 12 creatures. But this is gonna mess with the combat pretty bad. It's gonna be hard for your opponent to overcome it. So I'd give this one a 7.5. Next up we have Griffin Avery. At the beginning of your end step, if you gain 3 or more life this turn, create a 2/2 white Griffin token with flying. You're gonna see white has this trigger, 3 or more life, in order to do something. This is a great payoff. Even if you gain 3 life in one turn and then you play this, you make a 2/2 Griffin, then this card is good. Once you start making multiple triggers of this one, it's gonna be very good. It's kind of a work build around. You need to have that live gain deck, but once you have that one, this is gonna be even better. I will only give it a 6.5, but it's a build around-ish card, so it can be way better than that. Idol of Endurance. It's an artifact for 3 mana. When enters the battlefield, exile all creatures from your graveyard that cost 3 or less until this one leaves the battlefield. So you get them back in case this one leaves the battlefield. 2 tap until end of turn. You may cast a creature spell from among the cards exiled with Idol of Endurance without paying its mana cost. So it's gonna play a creature each turn. If you are the creature deck and you start playing your 2-drop, your 3-drop, your 4-drop, and so on, those will die. And then up to the 3-drops, you can bring them back. It's a nice way to keep the pressure on board. I would give this card a 7.5. I think it has a pretty big potential. Legion's Judgment. 3 mana, destroy target creature with power 4 or greater. Nothing much to say here. It depends if 4 power it's gonna be something usual in the format, but I assume it's going to be red and green kind of have the theme of having 4 or more power. White also puts counters on creatures. There's also prowess. Prowess is not gonna help because this is a sorcery. But I would still give this one a 7.5 grade. It's gonna get rid of the troublesome creatures. Light of Promise. Enchanted creature has, whenever you gain life, put that many +1/+1 counters on that creature. It's strange because this card doesn't bring any stats. It's fine if you put it on a lifelink creature, because then the creature is gonna double its power every turn. But coming with the risk of being an enchantment, I don't like this card. It doesn't provide any stats at the beginning. So I would just give this one a 4.5. It might be good in the live game deck, but even there, I think it's pretty niche. Makeshift Battalion. When this one attacks, this one and at least 2 other creature attack, put a +1/+1 counter on Makeshift Battalion. It's a 3/2. It's pretty bad without the trigger. It requires a lot of you. Attack with 2 other creatures. Probably at least one of those creatures is gonna die, and then this one only gets 1 counter if it survives, because even at 4/3 is not gonna be that hard to get rid of this one in combat. I will only give this card a 6 based on my experience playing it. I don't think it's that good. I don't know. Gaara the Diplomat, another mythic, 4 mana for a 2/4 lifelinker. Whenever an opponent attacks with creatures, if 2 or more of those creatures are attacking you and or planeswalkers you control, draw a card. So basically, when they attack you with 2 or more creatures, you draw 1. Then whenever an opponent casts their second spell each turn, draw a card. Your opponent can play around those effects, or maybe it's gonna be harder to play around the one with triggering, the one with attacking. Uh, Playing 2 spells, it's not that often. I don't know. It's a 4 mana 2/4 lifelinker. It's hard to evaluate, but I still think it's pretty good. I would give this one an 8. Your opponent has to change their plan if they don't have a removal for this one and one is still playing. It's gonna require a specific sequence, which might just give you enough time to take over the game. So 8 for Gaara. 9 lives, 3 mana hexproof, enchantment. If source would deal damage to you, prevent that damage and put an incarnation counter on 9 lives. When there are 9 or more incarnation counters on 9 lives, exile it. So it's capped at 9. 9 lives. And when 9 lives leaves the battlefield, you lose the game. Nah, don't play this one. Don't risk losing the game. Preventing 9 instances of damage might help you. But if it doesn't and your opponent has an answer, you just lose the game. So 1. It's the smallest grade I give for a white card. Pack leader. It's a 2 mana 2/2 classic 2 drop. Other dogs you control get +1/+1. There's the Dog Lord. And whenever pack leader attacks, prevent all combat damage that would be dealt this turn to dogs you control. So this is a free attacker. He attacks freely because gains. Uh, it allows you to prevent the combat damage dealt to him because he's a dog. And then if you have other dogs, this is even better. I will give pack leader a 7.5 because there are going to be some dogs in the format, and just the fact that this attacks freely might be pretty good. Maybe it's a high grade, I don't know. Maybe it's more like a 7, but I still think this is a fine card to have. Rambunctious Mutt. There's another dog. 5 mana 3/4. Enters the battlefield, destroy target artifact or enchantment an opponent controls. There are going to be some artifacts and enchantments that are pretty good in the format, especially enchantments, but not only. And that's a good effect to have. On a 3/4 body, that's gonna do some job after it resolves its enter the battlefield trigger. So I'd give this one a 6. You can't run too many of those, but one should be probably in every white deck. Revitalize, 2 mana for an instant that replaces itself. It's a cantrip, and you gain 3 life. It's nice that it triggers that ability of white that I've told about, of white and black, the life gain deck. It gains 3 life, and it replaces itself. It's nice, but it's still a filler. It's gonna be very useful in that black-white life gain deck. But otherwise I will just give it a 5. Runed Hollow. Enters the battlefield, choose a card name. You have protection from the chosen card name. Card game. 2 mana for an enchantment that does that. This is definitely a constructed card, and it's pretty rare that you're gonna use this one in limited. Hopefully you're not gonna face those bombs that you really need to deal with only by playing Rund Hollow. I hope you're going to have other answers. I will only give this one a 3. Sanctum of Tranquil Light. This is a cycle. There's a sanctum. There's a shrine on every color, and then there's a 5-colored shrine. This one is 1 mana. It's a legendary enchantment, so you can't really run multiple of those. 6. Tap target creature. This ability costs 1 less to activate for each shrine you control. So before this one is good, I think you need like 4 shrines, which is a lot. This is one of the worst shrines in the format. It's gonna be useful if you try to build around the 5-color shrine, which we will cover when we get multicolored cards. I don't like this one, and I will only give it a 2. I think it's a bad card. Seasoned Hollowblade. 2 mana for a 3/1. Discard a card. Tap Seasoned Hollowblade. Attention, this is not a cost to tap Seasoned Hollowblade. Yeah, it's an effect. So it can already attack, be tapped, and you could still discard a card. You tap it again, it doesn't matter, and it gains indestructible until end of turn. Basically, every card in your hand, it's a combat trick that saves this guy. If you're going aggressive with creatures, this is one to have. I will give a 6.5 to Seasoned Hollowblade. It's so resilient, you're gonna see. Secure the Scene. 5 mana for a sorcery that exiles target non-land permanent at the cost of its controller creating a 1/1 white soldier. That's not something too interesting, so this is still basically a hard removal. I really like it, and besides the 4 mana Pacifism, white doesn't really have removal. There's also a destroy target tapped creature, I think. Yeah, I will give this one an 8. It's gonna be a removal to go for in the format, and I won't be amazed if this is gonna get first picked a decent amount of time. Next up, Selfless Savior, a 1 mana dog. 1/1 in stats. Sacrifice this creature. Another target creature you control gains indestructible until end of turn. It's a filler. It's gonna save your bomb from time to time, but nothing too spectacular. just a 5. Siege Striker, 3 mana for a 1/1 double strike. This is an interesting one. Whenever it attacks, you may tap any number of untapped creatures you control, and Siege Striker gets +1/+1 until end of turn for each creature tapped this way. It's a 1/1. It requires you to tap, I'd say, one creature to trade generally, and 2 or 3 creatures to be hard to deal with in that combat. But it taps your creatures, so it leaves your shields down. I'm not sure what to say about this card. Also, you can only do that buff thing if you're attacking. So I would only give this one a 5.5. I think it's not gonna be that great. Yeah, it's gonna be good from time to time, but more often than not, you're not going to be able to make it more big than a 2/2 double strike. And 2/2 double strike, it's not something busted. Speaker of the Heavens. This is very interesting. 1 mana for a 1/1 Vigilous Lifelink. Tap, create a 4/4 White Angel creature token with flying, but activate this ability only if you have at least 7 more life than your starting life total, and only any time you could cast a sorcery. So you need to be at 27 in limited to trigger this one, but once you're at 27, this creates a 4/4 flyer every turn, which is great. I will only give this one a 2, because you're probably not going to get to 27 unless you are the black-white life gain deck. And if you are that deck, you're going to make a ton of HP, and then you want this one. This is definitely a build around card. You want to pick this one early, first pick, first pack, and then build your deck around it if you can do that and if it's open, because otherwise it's bad. But the ceiling, I think it's great on this one. Staunch Shieldmate, 1 mana for a 1/3. So yeah, I don't know what to say about this one. I think it's a filler, but it's interesting. It's interesting because you get these stats at 1 mana. 5.5 for this card. Swift Response, there it is. Destroy target tapped creature. It's an instant, so it's gonna get rid of attackers before they hit you. Probably gonna be for the more controlish decks, but it's still a removal. I will give this one a 7, yeah, because it only deals with tapped creatures. You can also tap their creatures with some effects if you don't want to wait before they attack with the creature. Tempered Veteran, 2 mana for a 1/2, goes perfectly with the theme of white and green. For a white mana and tap, put a counter on target creature that already has a counter on it, and then for 6 mana and tap, put a counter on target creature, just like that. It's interesting. In the right deck, a deck that has multiple sources of +1/+1 counters, it's gonna be good. Once a creature has a counter on it, this is only 1 mana to keep that creature growing. I will give this one a 6.5, but it has some potential to it. Valorous Steed, 5 mana for a 3/3 Vigilance dude that also comes with a 2/2 White Knight Vigilance token. So 2 bodies, 5/5 worth of stats. This is pretty nice. I would give this one a 7. The only trouble is it's 5 mana, so you're not gonna be able to play too many, but it's a common, and it's totally fine playing 2 of those in basically any white deck. I think it's a good one. It might even be more than 7, depending on how the format will shape. Vryn Wingwer, 3 mana for a 2/1 flyer, the classic 2 power flyer at 3 mana, I guess, and non-creature spells cost 1 more to cast, including your spells. But it's a nice disable to have. I will give this one a 7. And then Worded Battlements, 3 mana for a no-3 defender that gives your attacking creatures +1/+0. It's kind of the both sides of the coin here, because it's a defender, but it rewards aggressiveness. I don't know what to say about this one. I will only give it a 5, because if I attack, I don't want to just stop attacking and play this one. But in a go wide deck, it might be okay, and it might be like a 6 once you have a good go wide deck. That is with white. So thank you very much for watching my review on the M21 white color. If you like my content, please make sure to give it a like. If you want more content like this, make sure to hit the subscribe button and also the little bell so that you always know when I post a new video. Cheers and see you next time, guys.